All right, let's welcome in our guest, Kenny Beecham. Kenny, what's up, man?
How's it going, JJ, TA? Thank you for having me.
The man, the myth, the legend in the building.
We were just discussing off air that this seems like this has been a long time coming. You are probably the most famous NBA fan, one of the most famous NBA fans, one of the most popular YouTubers. You've now got a podcast out called Game.
Yeah.
You can get it on Spotify. It's obviously there's a YouTube channel for it. So this is great, man. Like we're really looking forward to this conversation. Looking forward to talking hoops with you. As I mentioned, you got like all in basically 2 million YouTube subscribers.
Yeah.
Give us a little give our listeners a little backstory on you and how you grew such a big following.
Yeah, I started YouTube about a decade ago. So I'm 14 years old. I'm still living with my dad. And one Christmas, I just wanted one gift. And there was this little thing called a Dazzle. And what it did is it went from like your laptop to your like your Xbox or your PlayStation, and it recorded gameplay. Because at that time, I wanted to play Call of Duty on the internet. I saw guys like XJaws, who I don't know if he's still around the YouTube world, but I saw other YouTubers doing this. I'm like, I'm an okay to pretty good Call of Duty player. So let me record my gameplay and put it out there. And I quickly found out Call of Duty wasn't for me. And I was more passionate about basketball. So over the last 10 years, I've been trying to find this niche community or build this niche community in basketball. And it just turned into what it is now.
When did you feel like it turned? At what point?
I think it turned. And JJ, I'm going to tell this story. I don't know if you know it. I've told you on Twitter, but Twitter's a weird place. I think it turned the moment I start working with House of Highlights. And the reason I start working for House of Highlights, I'm sitting at a Jiffy Lube getting an oil change, and I'm listening to JJ's podcast, and Omar Raja's on it. And Omar is talking about House of Highlights, and he said, we're about to go into YouTube. And at this point, I have like 200,000 subscribers, and I'm like, I do YouTube. I should probably shoot my shot. So I shot my shot at House of Highlights. They brought us on for 3 months. Then it turned into 6 months. And now I'm still working with them to this day. But that was the moment I knew, like, okay, sports media is something I can get into if just randomly I can throw an email at this big company and get signed.
The YouTube community is unique. I was actually just having this discussion with somebody the other day. It's the one sort of social platform that I can go on and just completely enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. There's no trolling in the comments. You don't have to look at the comments. I can watch 20 videos. I can watch 20 pieces of content and never have to deal with looking at a comment. Where Twitter, you're basically looking, if you want to look at any content, you have to view comments as well. Mm-hmm. Can you just sort of talk about what makes the YouTube community so unique and I don't want to say better, but so different than other social media platforms?
I think a lot of it is so organic. Nobody, and I mean nobody to this day understands the YouTube algorithm. Whether you have 2 subscribers or 100 million, nobody understands how to get on the recommended page for YouTube. But once you're there, everything is just very, very real. I mean, you just mentioned you don't have to interact with anyone. I can spend 2 hours, 3 hours creating a video and put it on YouTube, and it can go out to millions of people, and that would be their only interaction. Like, they know that another million people are watching the same video, but it's just them in the 10 minutes or 20 minutes of content. And then YouTube is so great because the recommended section is amazing, where you can fall down this rabbit hole. Just the other day, I was watching a YouTube channel named Secret Base, and they do these things, these super crazy recaps. And I'm starting to get back into baseball. So I'm basically going back the last 7 or 8 years of baseball content, just collectively, just without pressing the button. I click the first one, then it's auto playing episode 2 and 3 and 4. And I'm just sitting back in the basement enjoying myself. And I always tell people that YouTube is king. Even with like TikTok coming out, with Instagram and Twitter, nothing beats YouTube at all.
Tommy, do you remember your last YouTube rabbit hole that you went down?
Yeah, it was about 4 hours ago. I frequently go on YouTube rabbit holes of music festivals in different countries that generally countries that I have not been to, or like I've been to the country. Like I've probably watched 500 Glastonbury performances, which is in England, but it's like in a weird part of England. and it's like one of the biggest festivals. And it's even like so Arcade Fire, like our friend Win Butler, they did an amazing Glastonbury performance, and that's how I got into this, because when we had him on the show, I watched that beforehand. But then in my recommended section from now on, it just goes down the gauntlet of every different genre, and it's so easy to have it happen. But it's also you're educating yourself. You know, you get to really learn.
Kenny, how did you become an NBA fan? Because I'm doing the math here, and I know you're a Chicago Bulls fan. You're from Chicago, but you were born in 1996, which was the Bulls' fourth championship, and you were 2 when they won their 6th championship. So you pretty much missed. You've had a lifetime of misery as a Bulls fan. I'm going to be honest with
you. We had a couple years of greatness when Derrick Rose was at the top of the game, but that's it. But my story as an NBA fan comes from us being, I guess, a little less fortunate, not having like cable. So of course, the only form of basketball we get is like on local TV shows. And my uncle was a big time basketball player here in Chicago. He went on to play in Hawaii for a little bit for college. So basketball was always in the household. But the game that I remember as my first basketball memory, it was a late game in 2003, maybe 2002, where Allen Iverson is in the United Center against Jamal Crawford, and Jamal Crawford goes for 40, and I think Allen Iverson may have had 50. And if I'm not mistaken, the Bulls won, but that didn't even matter, because I saw Jamal Crawford score a bunch of points, and I was like, this is the sport. Because at this point, I was really battling between baseball and basketball as a young fan, and I went basketball because of Jamal Crawford and because of AI.
Was Jamal your favorite player growing up?
He was until he left the Bulls, which was, I guess, just a couple years after that. Because again, we only had Bulls. So like whoever the next Bull player was, and I think it was Ben Gordon next. I became a big Ben Gordon fan, and then it turned into Kirk Heinrich, then Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, and now
Kenny. You know, JJ almost ended up on the Bulls.
No, I don't know that story.
I signed with the Bulls in 2010. So the year that Derrick Rose won the MVP and the Bulls were the 1 seed, I had signed to be on that team, but I was a restricted free agent. I was on my honeymoon, and I think I signed in Florence. We ended up in Barcelona for 5 days, and we waited that whole time in Barcelona and found out on our last day of our honeymoon that Orlando was matching the offer. So I had to go back to Orlando. That's a big what if of my career.
It's a big what if.
Yeah,
that was a good team.
Huge.
Because I think that would have been such a good fit for me. And the one guy like I never got to play with when he was I never played with him, period. But I would have loved to have played with prime Joakim Noah in my prime. I think that would have been a good combo.
Yes. I mean, I look at the dribble handoffs between you and Joel, and I'm envisioning Joakim Noah as that guy. Oh man, that would have been. I mean, you can't really control Derrick Rose's injuries, but man, that team would have been really, really good.
Yeah.
I have a YouTube specific question for you.
Mm-hmm.
We've both watched a bunch of your videos now, and we know you a little bit. You're as long as we've known you, you've been really good at it, and I'm sure you've been really good at it for a couple of years. When did you feel like you made this jump in terms of becoming like a really good communicator? Because you're still a young guy, and it's a thing that a lot of people spend a lot of time training for. It's not a thing that happens overnight for almost anybody, even the best people on TV. So like, when do you feel like you, as sort of like a self-trained kind of person in this field, when do you feel like you kind of cracked the code?
I think it was my first year of college. I went to community college here in Chicago, and I didn't finish, but like I had a communications class, and it feels, I've told the story and I still haven't went back to look at what my professor's name was, but I did a presentation for her, and she was like, this is one of the best presentations I've seen in my entire life. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it wasn't like, I mean, I was kind of a slacker in school, so I kind of pulled up and did the presentation without doing a lot of the research about the things. And then I was like, okay, if I can impress her, then I don't know who I can't impress, because she literally listens to these type of things all day, every day. So it was just that, and then just doing it. Like when my first interview with an NBA player was Miles Turner, and this is right after Omar left House of Highlights and he ended up at ESPN. And after I'm done with Miles Turner, I asked him, could you tell this was my first interview ever? And he said something along the lines of, I thought you've been doing this for a very long time. And that was just like, okay, if my very first one is with a guy and he said, it looks like I've been here, then I can probably do this. So it's just been a lot of communications between me and people. And sometimes I do these practices where I'm talking to family and friends like I'm doing an interview or I'm doing something work related, just to try to get better at it.
It's all about the reps, man. It's all about the reps. How before Called Game podcast, you had another podcast, right?
Yeah, I'm still actively with Through the Wire, and that is with House of Highlights. Yep.
Okay, I got you. So you've got 2 episodes out on Called Game. RJ was your first episode. Horrible guest.
Amazing.
Horrible first guest. And Meta World Peace, Ron Artest as your second guest. Two great heavy hitters out of the gates.
Yeah, it was amazing. And right now we're playing the YouTube, not the YouTube, but the podcasting algorithm, because once you're new, if you can get a decent amount of downloads, you shoot up the charts. Like I could get the same. Too. I could get the same amount of downloads today, 6 months from now, and I would be nowhere near number 2 on the charts. But right now we're number 2. It's been great. And I even think that some of the ones that I'm going to film next week should be better than these, because after seeing the public's reception of it, I kind of get an idea of what's working and what's not. So I'm super excited to get back to LA to shoot more stuff.
How much NBA basketball do you watch every day, would you say, on average?
On average, I would say, when it's like right now, it's kind of weird because we're in the last couple of weeks of the season. I guess a lot of the stuff still matters for seeding. But once the season first started, there wasn't a game that I didn't have on. Like in this room right here, I have 4 monitors and 2 TVs. Like it's like all day, every day. As long as a game is on, I'm sitting here and I'm watching it. And a lot of that is just because I love it, but it's basically turned into a job that I do too.
Yeah, I saw yesterday. You had a pretty big moment. I would assume for you, a pretty big moment in your career, in your life. You were on Inside the NBA, and you got to do basically a highlight read of the Kings Thunder game, and they poked fun the fact that you had to do the Kings Thunder highlights.
Yeah, it was fun. They threw the idea to me as like, we're going to give you the worst game of the day and you have to watch it. And I was like, I was probably going to watch at least a good amount of this game anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. And my producer's like, you got to make fun about how bad these teams are. And it hurt me to do that because I do like a lot of the players on the Kings, but how many times are you going to get a chance to be on TV? So I was like, okay, I'll do whatever you need me to. There was one part that they cut out that I really wish that they kept in. I call Lou Dort your favorite player's favorite player, but they couldn't keep that in there for some reason.
Has it been weird? Tommy and I have talked about this a little bit on the pod with other guys, but has it been weird as a fan to watch this season? Because there's been some great games, but at times there's been some really horrid basketball, some really bad basketball. And, the Thunder were down, I think 65 the other day to the Pacers. Yeah. There's just been all these sort of fluke games.
Yeah, it has been a lot weirder than any other season, just because you don't really know who's going to suit up. I think that is probably the biggest thing, because you guys have to go through these big restrictions and with the testing and things like that, like it can really determine the next 2 weeks of your season, like it did for the Bulls, who were still trying to be competitive for that 10 seed. And now Zach LaVine is out for 14 days. I mean, he's coming back tomorrow, but that really hindered us from growing. So I would say it's been weird in that sense, but it's also been better. And this ties into the play-in, because there are 22 teams still right now competitive with just 2 weeks left of the season. Like, I don't know how often that has ever happened. So like the Washington Wizards are playing against the Bucks right now. I'm looking over at my other monitor while I'm talking to you guys, because it's a big time moment. Like this game matters a lot to like Toronto fans and Chicago fans who still think they may have a little bit of hope left. So I mean, it's been different. It's been weird, but I'm still loving it.
I was when this play-in idea was first brought to us. This was last January, so pre-pandemic. We talked about it. I think initially there was some pushback from the players off the jump. Like, we don't like it. A lot of times you can be a 7 seed and win 50 games in the West, and you could be penalized for not winning 51, and that just seems a little bit unfair. And then I think people, the league was basically like, no, we're going to do it. And then people started to come around to the idea. But then there's been all this backlash lately. And whether it's been Cuban, our owner in Dallas, or LeBron coming out publicly and saying they hate the idea, essentially. I guess my only gripe is that in this season, I'm not sure we need it.
Right.
And, so much of this season was about starting on Christmas and the advertising dollars there, and finishing prior to July 23rd and the Olympics, because we didn't want to compete for TV ratings with the Olympics. So I'm trying to figure out if the trade-off for an extra 2 or 3 games and 5 really valuable days of the season, which could have been rest for some teams, throughout the course of the regular season, I don't know if it was worth it. And I want to get your sort of opinion and perspective as a fan to see how excited you are for these games, because I know it adds a level of intrigue down the stretch because these games are valuable in the regular season, but I don't know if for the overall product if it was worth it.
Yeah, I think as an NBA fan, I think everyone is pretty excited to have a win or go home situation. But a lot of people do realize that, it's cool, but then again, the guy that just won that still has to go against the 2 seed and has to go against the 1 seed. So they're in cloud 9, but then they have to travel to these other cities. And the history of a 1 versus a 8 or 2 versus a 7. But people keep comparing it to the wild card in baseball, but it's not. It's just not. The wild card. Baseball is so much different than basketball. Typically, the better teams and better players are going to win majority of the time. And in baseball, it's just like a hot streak, And that was one of the videos I was watching. It was talking about the St. Louis Cardinals who went on a hot streak and then won the World Series from the wild card. But I can say from NBA fans' perspective, I think everybody's pretty excited unless you're a team or a fan of a team that's teetering.
Well, but Kenny, this is my question. And we talked about this a little bit with Drew. Do you think with just, not that you're going to speak for all NBA fans, but with the people you talk to and communicate with and everything like that, they acknowledge, look at the Nets, for example. First of all, we got to shout out Steve Nash on the show with how good a job he has done. Basically, those guys have played 1-2 games together the entire year. They're not going to play together before the playoffs. JJ's playing them this week. Every team has had injuries, COVID stuff, whatever it is, but every team has had their best players miss extended time at a level that has not existed in previous years. And I wonder sometimes, and Drew was pretty blunt with us about it. He basically just people don't always understand. He's they played 6 games in 7 days on 3 different coasts. No matter who you are, your body's going to get screwed up from that. And so having a level of kind of, even if you're still in favor of the games and everything like that, being all right, this is rough. And I think some of the frustration, and JJ, tell me if this is wrong, but some of the frustration is just at the end of the day, they got to go out and play and everybody else gets to sit at home on Zoom, And so it's it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done when and it's not, I'm not even just talking about us, when the media or whatever, everybody else gets to sit at home and say, do this, do that, do that. And it's they got to go get tested 10 times a day,
right, and
fly all over the place. And it's not just the players, it's the coaches, it's the staff, it's everybody. And so it is rough.
Yeah, I completely sympathize with the players with that perspective. You guys are the ones that are going out there and doing it. I'm sitting here watching, like you said. So if the players came back after this year, the playing was nah, it's not worth it, then I think most NBA fans would be okay, cool. Because nobody wants to see someone turn an ankle in the playing game, and now it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Kenny, who are the guys in the league that you enjoy watching the most? Because I know you've got your monitors and screens and you're watching just about every game, but there are certain guys that you can't miss.
Jamal Murray would be one of those guys, especially when he's got it going. I saw him do it live against my favorite team, just a crazy step back in the corner for basically a game winner. Jokic, obviously, I guess the Nuggets in general, but Jokic this season has been amazing. And I guess that carries on from the past couple years. One of your correspondents, Tyrese Halliburton, is a friend of mine too. And he's been amazing to watch. As somebody that only watched him a little bit in college, to see his game translate so well to the NBA is amazing. I'm excited about what he's got. Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks for opposite reasons. Ja Morant for his offense, Dillon Brooks for his defense. The list can go on. I don't think there's a single roster out there that doesn't have 2 to 3 guys that I absolutely love watching.
I love your super fandom that you just shouted out Dillon Brooks. And I saw a video you did, by the way, where you talked about Memphis, and they have completely overachieved the last 2 seasons to me. Yeah. And that's not a knock on their players, because they actually have a bunch of really good basketball players. They have a bunch of really good players. The fit's great. They have a certain style. And to me, I think you're spot on. Like their entire energy ethos, it comes from those two guys. It comes from Ja on offense, at his aggression, his passing, his daring, his athleticism, and then Dylan Brooks defensively.
I see teams like that and I get jealous as a Bulls fan to just see a team that's supposedly rebuilding but still super competitive every single night. And yeah, I mean, it's great coaching and they just have such a deep roster. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. missed 90% of the season and they were just cool. You know, they were cool with it. They're a blast to watch for real.
JJ, can you explain Jokic for a second? Can you explain what makes him so dominant?
Yeah, he doesn't really have any weaknesses in his game. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Because he's so big and such a great passer and such a willing passer. Because it's not just about being able to make the pass. He's such a willing passer that the threat of his pass puts you in a conundrum. And then, of course, he can score on ISO. He can score on closeouts. He can score on pick and pop. He can handle the ball. Like, to me, I don't want to speak anything bad about Joel because he's our guy. He's one of my closest friends in the NBA. But I have a hard time saying that anyone should win MVP but him. I think he should be the MVP this year. Kenny, what do you think?
What makes it even better is that he had this rep of being like a bad defender, but he's not. He's just not a bad defender anymore. He's the runaway MVP. You can make cases for other guys, but I don't think any case is as good as Nikola Jokic is this year, especially since he's like tacking on it. He had like 22 in the first half against the Knicks tonight, and they were up by 20 against the red hot Knicks. Jamal Murray goes down, and they go 9-0. It's like.
I think 9-1. I think they went on a 9-1 streak until they had lost to the Lakers the other night. They were on a 9-1 streak. Yeah, defensively, people don't realize how good his hands are.
Yeah.
So, the tendency for a big like him, because he's not the quickest guy, right, is just to put him way back in pick and roll coverage. And basically, we talk about drop coverage all the time on the podcast, but the tendency is for a guy like him, you put him way back in the pick and roll coverage. You drop him like you do with Gobert or Brook Lopez or whoever. But he's actually up in pick and roll coverage. And it's almost like it's a game of peekaboo a little bit, where when he jumps out at the ball handler, he's so good with his hands that he makes you change direction. And a lot of times he actually gets his hand on the ball, and he gets a deflection or he gets a steal. Again, Tommy, to your question, I should also say this: like, this goes without saying, but it should be said about every great player, whether it's Kyrie or Rudy Gobert or Giannis, whatever their skill set is. What makes a great player great is their mind, and Jokic is an incredibly smart player on both ends of the floor. We also should shout out Chris Paul for, his stats, it's not true MVP stats. It's a little bit, the comparison's been made, of course, to Nash when he won in 05 and 06. But just give the man his flowers. He's an all-time great. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. To be able to do what he's doing at his size, at his age, and to lead just like back-to-back years, two basically overachieving teams into high seeds in the playoffs. It's just incredible what he's been able to do. And as his friend, I'm super proud. I'm super proud and super happy for him.
He's my favorite player of all time, man. So
is he really?
He is.
Really? Okay.
Like right here, he's my favorite player of all time. It's not in here, but I have 3 pair of signed sneakers of his. It's like up here we have signed rookie cards of his. That's my guy. So as much as I would love to have him in the MVP, he could be in the conversation, but that's it. It's just a conversation. It's got to be Jokic long term.
Before we get to the draft, I did have one last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And off the top of your head, and maybe you've thought about this, as maybe you've asked this before, but if there was one thing that you could change about the NBA or add to the NBA, is there anything that you can sort of pinpoint?
The changes that I would make, I don't even know if they're practical changes. Like, I hate the last 5 minutes of a close game because the last 5 minutes are actually the last 45 minutes with all the reviews and things. But I don't know how you change that because, of course, you want to make the right call because the game is on the line. But like sometimes I'm watching from home and I watch the first version of the replay and I'm like, okay, that's Mavericks ball. But instead the people that are there watching on the monitors need 4 or 5 different angles when it's very apparent. So if we can shorten down those last couple minutes, I think everybody is so happy. Everybody.
I agree with you there. And as a player, I can echo that sentiment as well. All right, you're familiar with the pod. You know how the draft works, I believe. It's a snake draft. Guest always gets first pick. Tommy, just so we're all clear here, why don't we go over this one more time on what the draft topic is today? By the way, Kenny, we haven't done a draft in like 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal.
We brought this back for you, man. We brought it back.
Appreciate that.
So we're drafting best fictional offices to work in.
Yeah.
And very broad. So you start off, Kenny.
I'm going to say I don't watch TV or like movies or things like that very often. So I do have a list, obviously. I came somewhat prepared, but it may not be the traditional shows or movies.
Untraditional is better.
Okay, so the first pick in this draft, if you can get past the wage gouging that you're going to go through, I would love to work at the Krusty Krab. I feel like that would be a good pick. Every time SpongeBob is there, there's something big going on. There's festivities, there's concerts. But of course, Mr. Krabs is gonna, pay you a lot less than what you're worth.
I was gonna say for the first pick, it's a rough boss.
yeah, very, very true. Very, very true.
I'm also, I thought about adding this to my draft board because I do have a special place in my heart for SpongeBob. We went to the musical with my son for his birthday one year, and
nice.
My Kylie actually, who works for us, she was repping SpongeBob, the guy who played SpongeBob, Ethan at the time. And so we went backstage afterwards. My son met Ethan. So I have a special place in my heart. But I also would question the location of this. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because isn't it like where they used to do nuclear bombs, basically?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So there might be some radiation, but whatever. I like it.
All right. I'm up. I'm picking the Channel 4 newsroom from Anchorman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
whenever I get that face from JJ, that's so
you know
we're rocking and rolling.
That's a good pick. All right. I can't really argue with that one. All right, I'm gonna go with Men in Black from Men in Black. Okay. The gadgets.
Men in Black International.
Yes.
Was on my list. It was on my list.
The gadgets, just the interplanetary, all that stuff. I love it. My second pick, Tommy's going to hate this pick, but I want to work at Sterling Cooper from Mad Men, specifically season 3.
Pretty toxic work environment to be opting into, possibly more toxic than Kenny's.
Some of the misogyny, but you can start seeing in season 3, you start seeing some progressive policies come into play. Women are given more power in the workplace. They start speaking out against some of the men hitting on them. And then there's also the hijinks. And the best episode ever of Mad Men, when the guy gets run over by a lawnmower in the office, was from season 3. And that's when it was Sterling Cooper. So I'm going Sterling Cooper.
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
I was going to say, Kenny, do you know anything about Mad Men?
It's my favorite television show ever.
Do you know the premise of Mad Men at all or no?
No, I couldn't tell you.
I mean, honestly, with the amount of basketball you watch, this is not particularly surprising. I don't think that you're going to be able to crack into Mad Men. There's other shows before Mad Men that we're going to get you on.
Okay, cool.
My second pick, I'm going The Chocolate Factory from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh my God.
Wonka International.
That's
no, not Wonka International. Pick. Wonka Industries. That's it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, it's the Wonka Candy Company.
Yeah, the Wonka Candy
Whatever
Company.
It's called. Yeah. All right, I like it.
You guys are killing me.
Rolling. I'm rocking and rolling.
I have back-to-back, right?
Yeah.
So I'll go with my next pick. I'll go with Burns Industries, the nuclear power plant in Springfield. Just because, I mean, if you wanted a laid-back place to work, that is the way to go. It does not matter. You can get away with literally anything.
That is true. That's a great.
Oh, that's great.
You can do whatever you want.
It turns you yellow once you get there, but it might be worth it. It might be worth it. So I'll take that, and I'll take this one. I could probably save for the last round, but I'm gonna pick it anyway. It's Flavor Magazine from Living Single. I don't know if you guys are aware.
Okay.
It was a show with Queen Latifah as the star, and she had her own magazine company about like Black culture and music and things like that. And when I was watching that as a kid, I just loved the idea of her having her own spot, like her own magazine, and I would love to be there. So those are my picks. It's a good pick.
I don't remember anything about that show, but I did watch it. I remember
It's good.
that.
I like that pick.
It's a classic.
That pick. Those are two solid. Those are two solid choices.
All right, Tommy.
All right. I'm going with The West Wing from The West Wing.
Wow. Tommy, I'm not just saying this. This might be your best draft ever.
Just wait, dude. Just wait, man. I got
wait.
I got some ones in the chamber.
Oh man. I don't even know.
Another show, Kenny, don't watch.
You're
not going to like
there.
it. Don't, it's not for you.
Couldn't tell you.
All right. I'm going with Axe Capital. I was debating between Axe Capital or Gecko and Company from Wall Street, but the capitalist in me I would want to work at one of those financial titans. Second one, I'm going to say Cheers from Cheers.
Okay,
that
is one.
Seems like a cool hangout spot, man. Just like hanging at a bar. It sounds a good time.
Solid. Axe Capital is a great choice if you're in Bobby's favor.
Yes,
if you get to hang with him, if you get to be Wags, if you get to sort of run around and fly in his helicopter and everything like that, like it's a good gig.
Yeah, if you're on his inner circle, I think it's a great gig.
Yeah. Fourth, I'm going Wayne Enterprises.
Oh my
from
god,
Batman.
That is
You'd
say Wayne Enterprises over Stark Industries?
Yeah, I thought about the two.
Okay.
My perspective was like Alfred and Luther seem like they're like happy guys.
Okay.
You know, I feel like, and I don't know the Iron Man world as well, so I can't speak to that, but it feels like it's a loyal work environment, and you can work there for a long time, probably get paid good money, you know, get to see some cool stuff. Maybe depending on how things go down, you get to, I don't know, move up in the ranks a little bit. What do you think, Kenny? I feel like you have some perspective on this choice.
I had Stark Industries on my list. So I'm going to draft them just because, but maybe they're the lesser of the two now.
You got two picks right now.
I don't know. Here's what I would say. I would say the technology with Stark is better.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're talking about like the opportunity to maybe try on your boss's suit, like I'm always going to pick the Iron Man suit over the Batman suit.
Yeah, well,
I think you got the better of the two, Kenny.
I also think there's a storyline where one of Stark's employees tried to talk to him, and Stark kind of gave him the finger, and he turned into a villain. So that could be my next arc with me picking this one. And my second pick is to be like, I don't know, an intern at Psych. Are you guys aware of Psych?
No. What is that? What's Psych?
Psych is a TV show about a guy he was basically bred to be a detective by his father, and he would solve crimes.
Was this on USA?
Yeah.
I remember
I know the show. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he would solve crimes and tell the police department that he was psychic. But it's like one of my favorite shows, just randomly, just because it'd be on TV all the time. And I think it would be cool to try to solve crimes with them. So that's my second pick.
I like it.
Okay. I had a couple options for my last one. There are a couple that I'm not going to say because they would single-handedly ruin the draft for me, and I'm in a good place right now.
Yeah. So go with the safe. I'm going to tell you what. Go with the safe pick.
I'm going to go with the safe pick, which is Patty's Pub from Always Sunny, which would be a fun place to hang out for 7 seasons.
Yeah,
and
I
just
agree.
Another place, don't do any work. Everyone there is either fun to be around or you get to make fun of. Like it's an easy lifestyle.
It's a good pick.
I really actually thought that Channel 4 Newsroom was gonna last to the fourth.
That was my first.
Round.
That was my first overall.
I had it so deep on my draft board. I was like, man, I'll get that in the 5th round. I'm a little stuck here, man. I'm a little stuck. All right. Have you guys watched Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So I just started it. And just in terms of office space amenities, I'd like to work at Hulu. Just in terms of that. Now, I don't know the arc of the storyline. This is off like 3 episodes that I've watched, but it seems...
Kenny, it's based on Google. Hulu's based on Google in the show.
It's basically Google's campus.
It's like the Google campus.
Got you.
I think you will revise that pick once you watch more of the show. But for where you are in the show right now, it makes sense why you would say that. So it's.
I know, but I thought about Pied Piper, but I was like, those guys seem like total idiots.
See, I was thinking about Stratton Oakmont from Wolf of Wall Street, but I was worried that was going to tank it for me. Like I was gonna do that, and it was gonna be like, nah, like you just all the goodwill you've gotten yourself over the last 4 picks is all out the door.
It says a lot about your character that you would like to deal with cocaine, prostitutes, and cheating the stock market.
Just cheating the stock market as your job.
All right, we know Tommy's dream job. Sounds good.
Yep,
All right,
my 6th pick.
Kenny, we appreciate the time, man. Again, awesome stuff that you have going on YouTube. Please go give him a follow. Called the Game Podcast. You can get it wherever you listen to your podcast. Appreciate it, Kenny.
See you soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.